Okay. Maybe not. Let's check. It says upcoming. I don't know why it's upcoming. Should be live now. Okay, let's see if it came up on YouTube. Not yet. Do I need Control F5? Still not there. Can it be in home? Right, now it's there. Okay, Twitter, whatever it's called now. Keep calling it Twitter. Okay, my sound is coming through now, so that should be good. Yeah, we want to do stuff like this as well, but better, of course. Just kidding. What we have so far. We'll start in a sec. It says you belong to a group that may be interested in your post, data scientist and analyst. This doesn't seem to be the moderated one. Well, just do it. I don't know if it will obviously not go. Yeah, it went for 14-day review. That kind of fits the purpose of being live. Okay, let's see. Just fix my microphone first. Okay, it should be better sound. Hopefully, let me know. Otherwise, okay, so we have this application that we will be publishing today. Yes, it could use some improvements. So this start should be a horizontal scroller instead of this numbery thing. Let's do it straight away. And we also want to change the layout. The layout. This is, so I'm adding this sentence at the end is for reference only. Do not generate any code. Just mute it as well. So no, that just so it knows what we are doing. Want it at the end of the HTML file as well. Yeah, good starting point, whatever. Yeah, we'll take care of development after slightly improving some things. Okay, so we have the HTML. And we'll also need the JavaScript. Oop. What just happened? Just need that line commented out, save. I said do not generate any code. Why are you generating code? Okay, let's stop this. Even though, yes, stopping ChatGPT or their website, OpenAI website, really doesn't like you stopping generation for some reason. Hopefully they improved on that. They keep changing things all the time. This one was it September 25th version, whatever. I think that's could be the model. I think they're still making a lot of changes to how the site looks like. Pretty sure they did one after just recently, just like a couple of days or something. Right, so we have the JavaScript. And we will put the CSS there as well, because it is important at this stage. We want to actually publish it. Yeah, I don't want you to generate code, but this is enough for me to know you actually read the code that we have so far. So we did the JavaScript. We'll do CSS quickly as well. And why is it ignoring? Do not generate any code. Should be fairly straightforward. Additional enhancements. Yeah, do not generate that. We, by the way, do have a color scheme, which, yes, we would like to apply. What should we do first? Let's quickly apply the color scheme. Should have a file, colorful file. And let's do this. So apply this color scheme and change all existing colors. So all the colors are one of these 5. Let's do that quickly. It should be pretty straightforward, you would think. Can we have them as variables? I don't know why I didn't put them as variables. Don't know why the box shadow is there. should have really created variables out of it. Out of the colors. Out of the color. Right, this is better. Just need to make sure it didn't get rid of anything else. Looks like it did. Let's copy this file. Shorter. Yeah, okay, it's not great, but need to see it for a sec. Can we adjust the background to a black, which is Mirador 5? Also, can we change the HTML and CSS if necessary? To have 4 separate containers, 3 output containers and 1 input container. And arrange all the 4 containers on the screen in 2 by 2 matrix. Let's try this out. Thinking forever.
Absolutely. You can restructure both your HTML and CSS to accommodate 4 distinct containers arranged in a 2 by 2 grid. Here's how you might do it. I have wrapped the 3 output containers and 1 input container each in their separate less than div greater than. I have adjusted the CSS to style the 4 containers into a 2 by 2 grid and changed the background color to Mirador 5. Containers. Each of the 4 main containers, input container, output container 1, output container 2, output container 3, is styled as a grid item within the main container grid. Styling adjustments. Adjust styles as needed to fit content within these containers well, especially if there's a lot of content or complex structures within them. Responsive design. Make sure to test the responsiveness of this grid layout, especially on smaller screens. You might need to use media queries to adjust the layout for different screen sizes.
Yes, we do want that. Let's go over this for a sec. Let's do one thing at a time. So why doesn't it have the values or anything? So we have this one, and it should end with a div format document. Yeah, that's correct. Then we have the output containers. All these can be replaced. Let's format document again. Now in the CSS, a main container. Should be background color, black. We really have this? No. I probably don't want that shadow effect. It's okay. So no border, and no padding. Let's see what it looks like. Right is better. I don't know why the blue background has some info. Why is this not a link? Pretty sure it was a link before. This looks much better. The training doesn't do anything. This one works okay. Power spectral density seem to work. If I select both as this is not right. It would not select the same channel, probably give an error. Yeah. Let's clear console. This is working okay. If it's the same channel, it pops up with this huge error. So it won't even let you select it. We'll deal with it later. This is how it's loading by default. We definitely want this file scroller. Oops. Control Shift C was called input start. We want the input start to be a scroller, a horizontal scroller. So we can scroll through the whole file. There should be a seizure in this file as well, in the CEG.
To create a horizontal scroller for the start input, you can use the less than input type equals range greater than element. It creates a slider which users can drag to select a value within a specific range. You'll need to set the min and max attributes to match the range of your DAT file.
Let's check the chat if it's working at all. Write in HTML class container, input container from input start label. Doing this bit here. This line is the same. Instead of having a number, we have a range. Span ID. Yeah, we can make it scroll faster, go up to probably like 10,000 steps of, let's start with steps of 10. This number meant to, yeah, we don't like this type of behavior. We want it only to change. Can we show what the charts are updated? The output charts are updated only when the value have been changed. So after the value have been changed.
Certainly. You can modify the JavaScript to update the charts only after the user has finished changing the value of the scroller, i.e., when the change event is fired. The change event is fired when the user releases the slider, allowing you to avoid updating the charts while the slider is being dragged.
Yes, that's exactly what we want. Just go back for a sec, so we modified this. to modify the JavaScript. It's the previous. Yeah, there's all sorts of issues with the browser. Just the most important that my microphone is working. Yeah, it stopped working in the speech to text thingy. That's okay. To style the range, input type. We need an input time range. Right, this is better. Oops, yeah, same mistake. Why is it using background 1? No, we want like a background 4 or something for that. Yeah, that's right. Didn't it change? So one at least, yeah, probably. Why the color is not changing? It's okay, I'll deal with the colors. Border color. There's no border. Stat number. Well, that's number is definitely not updating. Start value. Yeah, not sure what's up with that. I think we also, so the seizure should be, did get rid of all that code. Can't believe it's doing that. It's like getting rid of stuff that I told it to use. Skip rows. I don't remember where the seizure is. It's like 100. We'll find it in a sec. Okay, in the JavaScript, to change the JavaScript. Event listener. Can we regenerate the whole? Can you regenerate the whole JavaScript code without missing bits and all the code that wasn't changed to still be there? Otherwise, just giving you bits and pieces. We have to check that. So we have extra constants. Start input and start value span. Date start value. Date plots, yes, plot post request from data. Response okay, yes, return text. It's correct, plotly react. It seems legit.
Here, the entire JavaScript is included, ensuring that the plots update only after the user releases the scroller, thanks to the change event listener, while other inputs still update the plots instantly as they are changed. The initial plot rendering and value display when the page loads are also included.
Yeah, so that works okay. So now it's not changing everything when you do this. Only when you release the mouse, it will actually change. Right, and this number is now updating as well. So let's make it larger. It's taking some time to load now. To check that there's like no memory leaks. So this will be in seconds, I assume. Should have a seizure in here somewhere. Yeah, now it's just slow. Right, is that the seizure there? Let's use scroll with your keyboard buttons. That doesn't update the charts. If it's just taking, yeah, it's just taking longer. So not very responsive, is it? The window size. Yeah. It's not great, not very responsive at all. Yeah, this should have a high. Ideally, this thing will just have a downsampled view of the whole file, so you can click within it. And then should also, if it is downsampled, it should also show you where the seizure is. Any chance we can have the file scroller to show a downsampled chart on which we can select the region which we want the details of in the other output charts? So in other words, the start input scroller should be replaced by a downsampled data of the entire file, so we can select a region to focus on within the chart. We would also need to measure how long the file is, how many data points are in it, to make an automated decision of how much downsampling we should do.
Certainly. We can create a downsampling chart using the Plotly library to visualize the entire EGDAT file. Users can then select a region on this chart to focus on the detailed view and other output charts. Load the entire file. First, we need to measure the length of the file to decide the rate of downsampling. Downsample the data. Based on the length, downsample the data to create a manageable and responsive plot that provides an overview of the entire dataset. Enable selection. Use Plotly's range slider or selection tools to allow users to choose a specific region of the data to be displayed in detail in other output charts. Here's an extended version of your existing JavaScript to achieve this. You also need a corresponding Flask endpoint to send the downsampled data to the client side. Here's a basic example of how that might look. The downsampling rate is determined by the total number of points in the dataset. A new div with the id overview is assumed to be created in your HTML to hold the overview plot. The plot overview function fetches the downsampled data from a new load_overview endpoint and plots it on the overview plot. An event listener is added to the overview plot that listens for range selection events, plot layout. When a range is selected, the detailed plots are updated based on the selected range. Ensure to adapt and extend the code as per your specific requirements and dataset. Also, remember to consider performance implications depending on the size of the EGDAT file and choose an appropriate downsampling rate to make the overview plot responsive and user-friendly.
So we have a working well thing. Create a copy of all these files. I know, yes, I'm not using a proper a version control. Just something that makes sense to me. Let's call it working. Right, so we have those working files. We also need the HTML, don't we? Let's close all for a sec. Right, so this is so we have a template there. Don't have the actual code. Delete this one. Right, so we have the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and the Python application. Let's see, suggesting us to change the JavaScript.
Assume the selected range will be used to determine the data. Populate the detailed plots based on the selected range. This could involve fetching detailed data for the selected range from the server. Your existing code to update plots based on the start value, modified to use the selected range. You also need a corresponding Flask endpoint to send the downsampled data to the client side. Here's a basic example of how that might look. The downsampling rate is determined by the total number of points in the dataset. A new div with the id overview is assumed to be created in your HTML to hold the overview plot.
No. Yeah. This should be also in the input.
Certainly. To incorporate the new overview plot into your HTML, you would add a new div with the id overview. Since you wanted a 2x2 grid layout for the 4 containers, 3 output containers and 1 input container, you can adjust the layout to include this 5th container, overview container, in a way that it remains user-friendly and aesthetically pleasing. Here's how you can adjust the HTML to include the new overview container. We will also adjust the grid layout to accommodate this additional container effectively.
don't really. We want to use this as space. A new div with the ID overview should eventually replace the start input. So add it into the input container. It's left top.
Certainly. You'll replace the existing start input with the new overview plot within the input container. Below are the changes to be made in the HTML, JavaScript, and Python Flask code. Replace the start input with a new div for the overview plot in your input container. Add some additional CSS to style the overview plot container. Update the JavaScript code to include the fetching and rendering of the overview plot and to update the detailed plots when a range is selected. Ensure you have an endpoint in your Flask application to serve the downsampled data.
I have that missing
The start
bit in
input is
there.
replaced by an overview plot div within the input container. CSS is added to style the overview plot container. JavaScript is updated to fetch, render, and add interactivity to the overview plot. A Flask endpoint, load_overview, is used to serve the downsampled overview data to the client side. Make sure to adjust and test the code snippets according to your existing code and data to ensure compatibility and desired functionality.
Do we have this code? I don't think so, because we didn't have that function. Wait a sec.
Certainly. You'll replace the existing start input with the new overview plot within the input container. Below are the changes to be made in the HTML, JavaScript, and Python Flask code. Replace the start input with a new div for the overview plot in your input container. Add some additional CSS to style the overview plot container. Update the JavaScript code to include the fetching and rendering of the overview plot and to update the detailed plots when a range is selected. Ensure you have an endpoint in your Flask application to serve the downsampled data. The start input is replaced by an overview plot div within the input container. CSS is added to style the overview plot container.
Got that one. So essentially we want to replace this view with the overview of the entire file. What's this bit?
Certainly. You need to use the selected range to fetch and display the detailed data on the other output charts. One way to achieve this is to modify the existing update plots function to accept the start and end parameters and then use them to fetch the detailed data within the selected range. Here's the expanded JavaScript code. Expand the update plots function and modify the plot layout event handler as shown below. The update plots function is modified to accept start and end parameters, which represent the selected range on the overview plot. The plot layout event handler is updated to call update plots with the selected start and selected end whenever the user selects a range on the overview plot. Form data, append, start, and form data, append, and end are used to include the selected range in the form data sent to the server to fetch the detailed data. If needed, you might also want to update the Python Flask endpoint to use the selected range to fetch and send back the detailed data. Ensure to test and adjust the provided code snippets to fit into your specific application and data structure. Make any necessary modifications to ensure the selected range is used effectively to update the detailed plots.
Right, so in the HTML, class container, input container, input form. We have that. Let's have a label. Overview plot in CSS. Let's save that. Right, so we should have a plot here of the whole data file overview.
Update the JavaScript code to include the fetching and rendering of the overview plot and to update the detailed plots when range is selected.
Right, so in JavaScript, to update plots, and I will have a start and input. This is the whole function.
Certainly. You need to use the selected range to fetch and display the detailed data on the other output charts. One way to achieve this is to modify the existing update plots function to accept the start and end parameters and then use them to fetch the detailed data within the selected range. Here's the expanded JavaScript code.
Do we won't have this one for sure, but let's double check. No, so all update plot should be replaced.
The update plots function is modified to accept start and end parameters, which represent the selected range on the overview plot. The plot layer layout event handler is updated to call update plots with the selected start and selected end whenever the user selects a range on the overview plot. Form data, append, start, and form data, append, and end are used to include the selected range in the form data sent to the server to fetch the detailed data.
Why is this optional?
If needed, you might also want to update the Python Flask endpoint to use the selected range to fetch and send back the detailed data.
If needed, why?
Ensure to test and adjust the provided code snippets to fit into your specific application and data structure. Make any necessary modifications to ensure the selected range is used effectively to update the detailed plots.
Right, so we have this JavaScript. Okay, we're still gonna mess this up. My Python script is already over 100 lines of code. Have start and and is not being used. It's JavaScript, Python. We need a load overview function. Don't have it yet. What? Rest of the code to load and downsample the data. Load overview. So is load overview replacing load data? No. Load overview is not being called anywhere. Should have had load overview in JavaScript. Can you generate the whole JavaScript without any missing bits with the previous code that haven't been changed?
Certainly. Here is the complete updated JavaScript code with all parts integrated. The plot overview function is responsible for fetching the downsampled data and plotting it on the overview plot. It also adds an event listener to update the detailed plots when a range is selected on the overview plot. The update plots function is updated to accept start and end parameters and uses them to fetch and display the detailed data within the selected range. The overview plot is initially rendered when the page loads by calling plot overview. Ensure your server-side code, Python Flask, is set up to handle the requests appropriately, including the load_overview endpoint for fetching the downsampled data and the update_plot endpoint for fetching the detailed data based on the selected range.
That's what this magic sentence is.
Certainly.
Hopefully.
Here's the updated app.py file with the appropriate changes, including the new load_overview endpoint to provide the downsampled data and modifications to update_plot to handle the selected range from the overview plot.
Just check that it
A new
doesn't have
endpoint
any.
load_overview is created to return downsampled data for the entire EEG file. The downsampling rate is calculated based on the total number of data points. The load_data function is modified to accept start and end parameters, which are used to load only a specific range of data from the EEG file based on the selection in the overview plot. The update_plot endpoint is updated to use the start and end values from the post request, which are set based on the selected range in the overview plot. Ensure to adapt the specific calculations and data structure as per your requirements and data. Adjust the downsampling logic in load_overview according to the file size and performance. The above code downsamples to around 1000 points for visualization. You may need to tune this number based on the actual data and performance considerations. Ensure that the rest of the logic, calculating raw EEG, spectrum, and coherence data, is appropriately integrated and adapted to your specific needs and data.
Okay, let's try this again.
Certainly. Here is the complete app.py file with all the parts integrated. I'm assuming you have existing calculations for raw EEG, spectrum, and coherence plots, so I'll include placeholders for them.
No. It's like without any placeholders. I want you to integrate stuff.
Absolutely. Here is the complete updated app.py including all necessary parts.
That's correct. Yeah, why is this? Yeah, I don't like magic numbers. Because there's 1000 there. That's the downsampling. Ideally, this number will be automatically calculated. We'll try it out anyway.
A new load_overview endpoint to serve a downsampled version of the EEG data for the overview plot. Updated update_plot endpoint to handle a range of data determined by the start and end parameters sent from the client side after the user selects a range on the overview plot. Included full data processing for raw EEG, spectrum, and coherence as per the original structure, without placeholders. Make sure to adjust the code according to the specifics of your dataset, like the channels you want to display or the sampling frequency. Also, thoroughly test the application to ensure that the integration is working as expected.
Yeah, this is loading forever. This is now loading for too long. Can we make it load quicker?
There could be a few reasons for slow loading times, including large dataset, complex calculations, or inefficient code. Here are some strategies to make the loading quicker. Load only the necessary data. For the overview, load a highly downsampled version of the data. The detailed data should only be loaded upon user selection. Cache the results of expensive calculations or frequently accessed data to avoid recalculating or reloading them. Optimize JavaScript, CSS, and HTML to ensure quick rendering of the web page. Minimize the use of blocking resources. Ensure that the server is well optimized and has sufficient resources to handle the load. Here's how you can update the app.py and front-end code accordingly. Install Flask caching extension to easily add caching to your Flask app. Implement caching in app.py. Update the JavaScript to avoid unnecessary data loading and rendering. Make sure to test these updates thoroughly to ensure they're improving performance as expected and not introducing new issues. Also, look into optimizing the data processing and handling part, considering asynchronous processing, parallelization, or using more efficient libraries, methods for calculations.
Yeah, we want more downsampling. Right, so this is the
To load a
whole.
highly downsampled version of the data, you can update the load_overview endpoint to further reduce the number of data points being processed and sent to the front end. This can be done by increasing the step value and slicing when loading the data. This will effectively reduce the data size and should help to improve the loading speed significantly. Here's the adjusted load_overview method in the app.py file to include a more aggressive downsampling strategy. In this snippet, I've increased the downsampling rate by changing the denominator value in n equals max, len, df, 5000, 1. You should adjust the 5000 value to achieve the desired performance while still maintaining enough data points for a useful overview. This can be adjusted to suit the size and detail of the data you are working with. Also, remember to test thoroughly to ensure the downsampling gives a good balance between loading speed and the resolution of the overview plot. You still want to have enough data points to make meaningful selections for detailed viewing.
It's still loading forever. Ideally, this number will be automatically selected. Still potentially reading the whole file first. That is not the problem at the moment. I don't have the fav icon file, whatever. So don't really need it for now. Still loading. Yeah, we need at least 10 times. I don't know if it will be like linearly faster, as in if you increase the sampling 10 times, would it load 10 times faster? Probably not. Can we automate this number? How many data points do we have in the file? This selection then should still, is it still? doing something. So in theory, when you select it in whichever way, it should then adjust all the other output values. This is actually not doing anything. There's no error. It's super slow.
It seems like the data size or the complexity of operations is causing the application to load slowly. Let's focus on optimizing it further. Firstly, optimize data loading by only reading the necessary amount of data from the file instead of the entire file. This will significantly reduce the initial loading time. Count the total number of lines in the DAV file efficiently to determine the downsampling rate dynamically. Here's the modified load_overview method in the app.py file. Optimize JavaScript to load and render the overview plot quickly. Use a more efficient file format like HDF5 or Parquet for storing and reading large datasets. They allow for faster reading and writing, and support compression to save storage space. Implement a loading spinner or a similar indicator in the front end to inform the user that data is being loaded, improving the user experience during wait times. Implement data indexing to quickly access the required data segments without loading the entire dataset. Profile the application to identify specific bottlenecks and optimize those areas of code. Tools like cProfile for Python can be helpful. Consider using a more powerful server or enhance the computing resources if server performance is a bottleneck. Implement these changes and adjust as needed to achieve a balance between data resolution and loading speed. Always test the changes to ensure the application's functionality and performance are as expected.
We haven't updated the HTML. And here when you do still too much data points in there, don't actually need them. Should be able to only read. Can we change this to read only one column? Could be the first column by default.
Certainly. You can optimize the data loading by reading only one specific column from the CSV file, which will significantly reduce the loading time. You can use the USECOLS parameter of the PD, read_CSV, function to specify the column index or name that you want to read. Here's how the updated load_overview function might look. In this update, the USECOLS equals 0 parameter is added to PD, read_CSV, to read only the first column of the dataset. You can change 0 to another column index or column name as a string, if necessary. This change will speed up the data loading process as it reduces the amount of data being read from the file. Make sure to adjust the other parts of your code that rely on this data to ensure compatibility with the changes. Also, it's crucial to conduct thorough testing to confirm that the changes result in the expected performance improvements and that all features of the application still work correctly.
Can you plot how to print out in console in terminal.
You can use Python's built-in print function to output the total underscore points variable to the terminal. Modify the load underscore overview method like this. This will print the total number of data points, lines in the file, to the terminal each time the load underscore overview endpoint is accessed. Ensure that your Flask app is running in a mode where it can print outputs to the terminal, which is typically the case when running in development mode locally. If you're running the application on a server or in a different environment, ensure you have access to the console output or logs where print statements are directed.
It's the total number of points. It's at 34 million. Here we have 5 million. So it should be okay. Finished loading the overview. Still doing something, or okay, script. Now we have an error. Line 27 error. Where's it actually coming from? Something wrong.
This error occurs when trying to parse an empty string as JSON. It's typically due to a network error, an error on the server, or a 404 error leading to an empty response body. You should handle such cases to avoid this error. Here is a refined version of the JavaScript code that handles potential errors like empty response body or JSON parsing errors. Changes made. Checking if the response body is not empty before proceeding to parse it as JSON. Enhanced error handling to catch and log errors to the console. You can also display an error message on the web page to inform users about the issue. Additionally, you should inspect the network requests in the browser's developer tools to see the exact response from the server. Make sure the server endpoint update_plot is returning a valid JSON response. You may need to refine the server-side code to handle edge cases and errors, ensuring it always returns a valid JSON response or an error status with an appropriate message.
Oops. Control Shift C. By mistake, closed the Flask application and stopped it from running. Right, this one actually gives JavaScript line 60.
The error, unexpected end of JSON input, indicates that there's an attempt to parse an empty string or an invalid JSON, which is often due to the server returning an unexpected or empty response. It could be that the load_overview endpoint is taking too long to process and potentially timing out or encountering an error, resulting in an incomplete or empty response. Enhanced error handling in JavaScript include additional error handling and logging to capture the actual HTTP response and status code. Ensure that load_overview endpoint is optimized and includes error handling to avoid sending empty responses. Include logs in your Flask application to trace the execution and potential errors. Ensure the server has adequate resources and isn't being bottlenecked. Here's how you can do these. Ensure that the load_overview endpoint is correctly implemented and optimized. Add error handling to catch potential errors. In the load_overview endpoint, add logs to print out the processing steps and any potential errors. For example, ensure the server is not being bottlenecked by resources. If it's a local development server, it might not be optimized for performance.